Hello, welcome to a video lecture that I've put together for you with some examples of proposals. Um, Both a proposal that I had worked on that's, in my mind, actually not very good, and some examples of student proposals. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so the first document that I wanted to show you, I've already uploaded to D2L in the course content area. And under the proposals section, a couple of documents here. One says final draft of FIPSI, and we'll talk about what that is, and the other one says FIPSI abstract. So let me open up this final draft. Okay, so the document that we're looking at here is a proposal that I worked on when I was still a faculty member at Arizona State University, a lecturer there. And so there's not a whole lot of formatting going on here, and we're going to talk a bit about that. And I think formatting certainly helps a document to look more professional. So we're going to emphasize that here in a bit. So this is kind of a raw text version of a proposal. So we see a title at the top, Developing and Assessing Hybrid Composition Teaching, Arizona State University English Department, and then myself and another faculty member as the project directors, or what's sometimes called the principal investigators, the PIs. And then we have text that's just, double spaced, kind of, fairly typical of what you might see for a academic writing assignment. But we're going to try to make your proposal look better than an academic writing assignment. So let me explain a little bit about this proposal. What was happening at the time was Arizona State University was one of the first schools in the country to employ what are called hybrid course learning models. Basically, they would take classes that met twice a week, like on a Monday-Wednesday schedule or on a Tuesday-Thursday schedule, and they would meet one day a week face-to-face, and the other day a week they would meet online. And what this allowed the university to do was for certain classes, and there were a lot of first-year writing classes, was to basically kind of double up on the classroom space. That a class could meet in the classroom on Tuesday while another class was meeting online in that time slot. And then on Thursday, that online class would now be meeting in that classroom, and that class that had been in the classroom on Tuesday would now be meeting online or engaged in some online activities. And so it allowed the university to kind of make double use of some of their classroom space, and administratively they wanted to do this, and they wanted to kind of see, first year writing was using up a lot of classroom space, and so that's kind of a problem in some regards. It's also a benefit in some regards because first year writing brings in a lot of money for the institution because there are so many sections of it. But they wanted to free up more classroom space, and so there was an administrative effort to go with this hybrid model. And as writing faculty, we didn't understand whether this was a good idea or not. We thought that it was, but we wanted to be able to kind of steer it pedagogically in terms of good practices for the online classroom and having academic freedom and not being kind of forced to fit into a one-size-fits-all box or have some type of outside software or learning management software kind of dictating to us how to run online or hybrid education. So we put together this proposal to study it. And I mentioned this organization, this abbreviation, FIPSI. FIPSI stands for the Foundation for the Improvement of Post-Secondary Education. And they're interested in funding projects that will, we thought, do exactly what we were trying to do, look at a means of instructional delivery and see if it's, what are good practices. And then they want to share that information with others. So we kind of outlined how we would share this information through conference proceedings and publications and white papers and other things. So, this is a pretty worthy project. The foundation, FIPSI, they go through a couple of rounds of screening projects. And the first round of screening, they just kind of read through the submissions. Sometimes they might not even make it beyond the abstract. That's why the abstract is so important. And they decide which ones to keep and which ones to toss, which ones to keep, which ones to toss. And in the first round of review, they eliminate 90% of the proposals. So they've got it down to 10%. And then in the second round, they eliminate 50%. So they cut that second round number in half, and then they fund the ones that are left. So we made it through the first round, during which 90% were eliminated, but we didn't make it through the second round. And I think there were a number of reasons for that I could talk about, but certainly, as we'll see here in a little bit, one of the things that could make a difference is trying to have a more professional proposal-looking document and something that looks less like an academic assignment. But that being said, I did want to point out kind of the parts of this proposal. So, so we've got an introduction here at the beginning, and the introduction to proposal is a lot like the introduction to an essay, except in an essay we have a lot of sentences, like this first paragraph here, leading down to what we call a thesis statement. In a larger document like this, instead of a bunch of sentences leading down to a thesis statement, we have a bunch of paragraphs leading to one paragraph that we think of as kind of like a thesis statement. And sometimes it's called a needs assessment or a statement of need, and it comes at the end of the introduction. So I think I said in my previous lecture that the introduction, we're building the argument for that this situation exists and that something needs to be done about it and that we're the ones to do it. So, part of that certainly is an appeal to ethos in our document, that by engaging in research and citing research in the document, that's an appeal to ethos. And I think in the introduction, that's the most logical place to employ ethos. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So as we work through here, we have this introductory paragraph, and then we start to see facts and figures. So we talk about in the fall of 2000. We kind of give a brief little need of the project here, but we expand upon it later. But we are kind of making use of some textual markup here in terms of bolding and bulleting. So make things easier for the reader to read it on the way through, and also easier for information retrieval when they're sitting around the conference table talking about all these proposals after the fact. So we say these questions are at the heart of our project. And we also see some key problems, and again, present them in bulleted list, easier to find in terms of information retrieval. And then I think each of these is diminishing classroom space, problems of access, students' frustrations, are expounded upon afterwards. So we have a subtitle, again, makes for good information retrieval after the fact. We also see more facts and figures and a national survey of information technology in U.S. higher education. We see statistics here. Strangely, we see a footnote here, which is not MLA style, and we're kind of inconsistent about that. And as we go further down, we see again the next subheading, that previous bulleted list. So again, building some order and structure into the document. We also see another parenthetical citation, which is consistent with MLA style, and another one here and another one here. There's that source on that footnote from before. So as we work down, we see more use of sources throughout. So we're enhancing our ethos as writers and in this document by showing that we've done our homework. So we are able to document that this problem exists and something needs to be done about it. So going on, let's see. We have some other bulleted items down here. Again, helps with information retrieval. And the significance of the project is really our kind of needs statement, needs assessment here, why it's important, and the fact that we're going to share it with others. And then I think this part, project design, was a part that I wrote. So this is the proposed program. And we just started it as another paragraph in this same document with a heading there. But I would encourage you to think about this as another chapter in your document and start it maybe on another page and maybe a little bigger text, do some formatting, and proposed program. In the proposed program, we won't see as much use of sources. Instead of our primary rhetorical appeal being ethos in this part, it kind of shifts our rhetorical stance, so to speak, and it's more logos in this part. We want to show the reader what they're going to get, for their money in as much detail as possible. Show that we've thought it out in terms of personnel and supplies and facilities and those types of things, and we want it to appear logical. And so they're going to be more convinced. We've convinced them that there's a problem. Now we're convincing them, that we've thought through it. And then after this, we're going to have just a paragraph, probably a qualifications and experience section. So, and then typically a budget, and then any appendices after that. So as we look through the project design, we don't really have time to read it in detail, but we do see that this document is kind of structured year one, and near the beginning of each semester, bulleted items. Throughout the semester, more bulleted items. Toward the end of each semester, and then academic year 2, how it's going to expand. Academic year 3, how it's going to expand some more. And so, again, trying to show your reader that you've thought your way through it. So evaluation and assessment. One of the parts of the proposed program toward the end should be assessment and evaluation. How are you going to assess the project in a couple of different ways? There are two types of assessment that we're concerned about. One's called formative assessment, and one's called summative assessment. So formative assessment helps to see that we're doing what we said we're going to do. So helps to shape the project along the way. So how are we doing so far? Maybe a status report, progress report, and kind of gives the client an update on how things are going. But it also helps us as the program coordinator to see how we're doing and whether we need to speed things up or slow things down or revise the schedule or the budget or whatever. And so that's formative assessment. Summative assessment is at the end. Maybe you're going to promise to follow up with a report and then maybe a one-year update or something to see how things are going. So doing something at the end. So another way of thinking about this is formative and summative assessment are found in the classroom. So quizzes are formative assessment. They kind of help the student and the instructor to know what's being absorbed, what's being retained, and should also help the instructor to see what's not being absorbed or retained, and then what needs to be stressed or reviewed in some way. So summative assessment would be like a midterm, a final exam, a term paper or something that comes at the end to kind of show your knowledge over the course of the semester. So quizzes should be used in a formative sense. Unfortunately, I think a lot of faculty use them more in a summative sense. They don't really respond to the quiz and review certain concepts that are not soaking in. So anyway, assessment is part of the proposed program, and so we talked about that. And we have this chart or table in here. And there was a budget and some more documents at the end. But this is, I think, dissemination strategies. So how we're going to share it with other people. And so I thought this was a pretty good proposal. But in final review, it's not formatted very well. In final review, half the reviewers saw the importance of the project and half could not. So that was kind of the undoing of this project. So the abstract, I'm not going to take up too much time showing you that, but that's just a summary of the proposal. And it's typically written toward the end. We pretty much start with the introduction, write your way through to the end, and then come back once you've got that finished and write the abstract. And then once you have that all done, I think the very last thing that you write is the letter of transmittal to convey the proposal from your hands into their hands. So let me show you some student examples and talk about some more of these aspects of the assignment. Okay, this particular proposal is a training proposal. We see on the right-hand page there, and that's the cover, but the student put the letter of transmittal before the cover. So maybe the letter of transmittal, maybe the proposal is actually a separate document or something, but sometimes it's attached to the cover, so that's why it comes first. But it wasn't the first thing written. It was probably written last. Kind of like with the Document Standards Manual, I'm encouraging you to develop a design for the document. Use in Microsoft Word some of the templates. You can change the cover, you can change the color palette, you can change, add some headers and footers to kind of give it some overall unity. And I think just adding a cover, creating a cover, kind of gives you a sense of accomplishment early on when you haven't written anything yet. And then the next thing is the table of contents. So think of it, as kind of an outline, and everything that you list in the table of contents, then go create after that a separate page. So we have table of contents. We're going to list all this, come down here underneath it and do page break, and then do introduction, and then page break. Maybe you have these different sections, but then proposed program, and then page break, assessment, page break, qualifications and experience, etc. And then you can go back and you can work on, you might even say executive summary or letter of transmittal. You can jump around and work on those different sections at different times. If you kind of get burned out on one, go on from that, come back later, work on something else. So, but this is also the order in which I would encourage you to attempt to draft this document, is work on the introduction first. I think that's the most important part. So this is the argument. This is the most obviously rhetorical part of the document. We're trying to persuade, use sources, establish ethos, and then propose program, work on that next. So now that you've convinced them, show me how it's going to be done in as much detail as possible. And again, an appeal to logos. And then we have the assessment, qualifications, and experience. And then go back and do the executive summary and the letter of transmittal. Okay, so introduction, going down here, we do see a bit of page design with the use of introduction and then this solid line underneath. And we have use of subheadings within the introduction. Again, emphasizing key points and helping to guide the reader's eye through it the first time through. Also helping with information retrieval after the fact. So we have a couple of pages and a statement of need. This does not look like a typical academic assignment with everything's double spaced and kind of boring, but there's been some formatting applied here. Proposed program, we get an overview, we get it broken down: day one, introduction, physical changes, mental changes. We have bulleted lists. Again, this is all set up to assist the reader through the document and with information retrieval. Psychological changes. Days 2 through 5, again, we see it broken down into parts and bulleted lists. We also have a timeline, which is very easy to do. Just set up a table and color in the different squares. Put the different tasks or objectives down here. Put the dates or the timeline across here. Fill in the appropriate boxes. It gives them a nice mental picture of it. It's also an appeal to logos because it's laid out so logically and straightforwardly. Assessment, again, part of the proposed program, but doesn't need to be overly long. Qualifications and experience, separate section, and but not too long, although I think that the student went on and kind of imagined that there was a proposal team, so included herself and then other people in the team, and then some additional information. These are appendices at the end. So that's a pretty good example, Alzheimer's training proposal. And let me see if I can find another example. Hang on a second. Okay, this proposal is for a bird's eye proposal for, I think, security cameras at Westchester University. And again, we see that there is a cover here. And so again, good place to start. Gives you a sense of purpose and accomplishment before you've up to your elbows in writing text. So as we move down, we have the table of contents on the right, which again is where I'd encourage you to start and create all these different sections in your document, work on them in different shifts. And then we also see the letter of transmittal. This one is inside the table of contents, or inside the cover this time. Either way is just fine. And then in the letter of transmittal, you're just trying to give them the briefest kind of introduction to the project to make them read on. So don't try to hit them with everything. Just tease them into the document. Tell them enough to get them interested, and then boom, there's the rest of the document. So, and again, that's probably the last thing that you write is that letter. Moving on, we have an executive summary. Happens to be put in a box. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. And then we get into the introduction and 2.5 pages. The proposed program. Again, we see the tables and charts, which heavy appeal to logos, fully developed text. There's an estimated budget, which is not required for this assignment, but it's a typical part of a proposal. Assessment, again, part of the proposed program. And there's the team members and their experience. And I think that's the end of the doc. Okay, I think those examples might have to do for now, but hopefully that gave you some more ideas about the proposal assignment. And again, consult the documents that I've posted, typical parts of a proposal. Break up your documents in those sections and work on developing them. Work on your document design and see if you can work toward a rough draft of the document, and let me know when you get to that point, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.